Welcome to the PSETA podcast series. As part of the deliverables in terms of the PSETA Real Research Partnership, Real undertook to design and produce a number of podcasts. Now, the intention of this podcast series is firstly to showcase the findings of key research areas that were conducted on behalf of the PSETA, and secondly, to reflect and engage with some of the key issues that are facing the public service sector, looking at issues around skills, capabilities, competence, and capacity. Now, in this podcast series, the researchers for each project will share the research focus, the research findings, and the research recommendations from their respective projects. And in view of this focus, we will want to look at areas such as unpacking the notion of a performing state, what skills can and can't do for a capable state, skills planning in the public service sector, and what is needed to facilitate the building of a capable state. Today, we are joined by Dr. Tolika Sibiya, who is going to tell us more about the work that he did within the larger PSETA Real Research Project. Dr. Sibiya, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Without further ado, let us begin. Can you please tell us what was your research project about?
Well, the project was about public sector policy directions and priorities associated with the UN SDG goals, looking at the impact on employment and skills demand in the public service. The purpose of this from the PSETA side was to understand better and examine the impact on skills, knowledge, and capabilities required by the South African public service, both national and provincial, to enable and deliver against SDGs. The focus were SDG 4 and 3 specific SDG 4 targets, 4.3, 4.4, and 4.7, were identified as core focus to build an in-depth understanding on the knowledge, skills, and competencies associated with this that could be delivered.
Thank you so much. So, what would you say was the central problem or the central concern that this research was trying to address?
Well, at the first value, the problem that one would have identified is that there is nothing much known in South Africa about the progress one were making around SGDs, but also what type of skills or capabilities and competencies required by the South African state, both national and public, to deliver this. I think that would have been the main issue that the research was trying to understand the skills that are required to deliver on SGDs, and also how far are we to track progress that we're making as South Africa on SGDs, especially on SGD 4.
Interesting. From the project, what would you say were the findings that emerged?
Well, we have done a couple of things to come to the findings. One, we've done interviews with 7 stakeholders, namely States SA, DPME, DHET, universities, South Africa, as well as the National School of Government. I think there were 7 stakeholders to understand from their view how far are we as a country in relation to this, but also what type of skills are required from their understanding by the South African public sector to deliver on SGDs. So there were 4-5 findings that emerged out of the interview process. One, there is a sense that the South African public sector, both national and provincial, they are aware and have integrated and implemented the SGDs and also integrated these SGDs into their national policies. I mean, if you talk about the National Development Plan, all stakeholders agree that 1, we are aware of SGDs. 2, South Africa has integrated and implemented to some extent the SGDs. So there's a first finding, awareness and integration and implementation of SGDs. But 2, equitable access and inclusivity in the PSET system. There's also an acknowledgement that the country is doing fairly well to ensure that there's inclusivity. There are more women accessing the PSET system, and there are also women taking so-called STEM fields or training programs or qualifications. And also the infrastructure in terms of buildings is accessible for those that are with disabilities. So there's inclusivity and equitable access in the sector. And also, the third finding was the need to build and develop a professional and agile public service in South Africa. All stakeholders that we have interviewed did acknowledge and feel that professionalizing the public service is very important for South Africa to deliver against on SGDs. Embedded in the professionalization is building a capable, skilled personnel to drive the public service to deliver on this. So the fourth or fifth finding was around coordination and partnership to deliver on SGDs. I mean, if you read the international case studies we have done of 4 countries, India, Uganda, South Korea, as well as, I forgot the fourth one, the issue around coordination and partnership seems to emerge very strongly in that there has to be a body or government department that is responsible to coordinate, and also the public sector can't achieve the SGDs on its own. It has to partner, collaborate with other stakeholders, as it were. And sound and monitoring and reporting capabilities and mechanism also emerge very strongly that there seems to be weaknesses in the service, public sector, both national and provincial, in relation to monitoring and reporting capabilities. Although there are departments that are responsible or seem to be doing this, but we are not strong in terms of monitoring and checking how far are we doing in relation to SGTs. Those were the main findings, as it were.
Very interesting. Dr. Sibiya, so what do these findings then mean, either for the public service sector in general or specifically for the PSETA? So, how does this add to our body of knowledge as to what is needed to build a capable state?
Two things for me. I mean, drawing from the findings, of course, literature and the case study that we have undertaken. Of course, one, there has to be an acknowledgement that South Africa has the frameworks to deliver on these SGTs. However, there are challenges, and these challenges vary. Amongst the challenges that we are confronted, let me say we, because we are in the public sector, is that a fragmented approach to coordinating the delivery on the SGTs with no one department to coordinate implementation is one challenge. Although the DHET is responsible for PSET system in South Africa and ensure inclusivity and responsiveness in the system, there is no department responsible for coordinating the SGD in South Africa. Although DPME and Stats SA have coordinating and operationalizing the monitoring and reporting of the SGD. And access to PC system is still compounded by a lot of challenges. Amongst others will be financial challenges. I mean, the VETS strike is a case in point which illustrates the point that there are still challenges in relation to access to the institution of learning in South Africa, finance being one, and also infrastructure challenges such as lack of accommodation in our universities, another challenge that the systems continuously grapple with.
Very interesting. So, I mean, you mentioned infrastructure challenges and also financial challenges. Now, building on the recommendations, or rather building on the findings, what recommendations then emerged to address the problem that you've researched? And if you may, what do these recommendations then mean in terms of how we locate the issue of skills within the public service sector? Is there any relationship between the meeting of the Sustainable Development Goals and the issue of skills within the public service?
Sure, a couple of points. I mean, one, there's a need to improve coordination to deliver quality education and training in South Africa. And what does that mean? It means there's a need to be a hands-on approach by government departments on SGDs in particular, and ensure that the implementation of the SGDs is coordinated from national to the lower level of government. So we need to improve coordination to deliver good quality education. And also there's a need to improve the monitoring and reporting systems against the SGDs. In this case, we have to upskill the current public sector personnel and PSET institution responsible for data collection on SGDs. So that personnel has to be upskilled or reskilled, and ensure that the public sector data analysts, statisticians, you name them, are also familiar with SGDs reporting or rather indicating mechanism. So upskilling the public personnel to ensure that they are aware and are familiar about the expectations of South Africa around SDGs is quite important, and also ensure that the new personnel coming in the public service is also aware and is made familiar with the SDGs. Of course, skills are quite important because this will need well-educated, skilled personnel with necessary qualification and training or competencies for South Africa to deliver on this. Yeah.
Dr. Sibiya, thank you so much. Very interesting piece of research and quite a lot of work that needs to be done from our side as the public service. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thanks.